little slower with the snow this morning, I think. But my name's Brad Sadoff. I'm the CEO for Black Hills Works and moderating today's Cracker Barrel. Excited to welcome you to this second one for the 2024 legislative session. We have coordinated a live stream and remote question submission options for the Cracker Barrel this year. You can find a link for the live stream on elevaterapidcity.com or on their Facebook page. A reminder for the legislators, because we are live streaming to a remote audience, please remember to speak into the microphone. To set our guidelines for today's questions and answer format, we ask in-person attendees to submit their questions written on the form provided, form that looks kind of like this. You can get this form from one of the staff members standing around the room or in the back of the room next to the coffee. These written questions allow the moderator to group similar questions so we can address more topics. You will see on the form that we ask for your name, but this is optional. However, we do like to recognize people and announce them when possible when they're asking their question. We remind you to please write legibly. If possible, please include a specific bill number. This does help legislators to better understand your concerns and respond accordingly. Only note cards with respectful questions will be read. To ensure we are able to cover as many audience questions as we can, we are asking that a maximum of 4 legislators address each question and that they keep their response to 2 minutes. We'd like to remind the legislators and audience members that this is not a debate. This is an opportunity to hear from and respond to constituents. So, before we begin, I would like to thank Western Dakota Tech and their team for the use of this great facility and helping facilitate the Cracker Barrel this year. And I'd like to invite up Dr. Ann Bowman, president of Western Dakota Technical College, to come up and offer a few words of welcome.
My official job is to turn on the microphone up here and make sure it works. So yay, I got that done. Welcome this morning to Western Dakota Technical College. I really find that these Cracker Barrels, let me just start by saying we're really excited to host them here. These Cracker Barrels are such an exceptional opportunity for our legislators and constituents to be able to talk to each other and ask questions. So it's amazing that we have this level of access to our legislators during the session because they are working hard, and I appreciate our legislators taking time on their weekend to come and talk with constituents and to share their understanding and interpretations and views on the things that are happening and what they are working with. And I want to acknowledge we have a couple of our Western Dakota Tech board members here. Kurt Pokart, who is our board chair, is here. And we also have Lynn Kendall, who is one of our board members in attendance. So thank you two, for being here as well. And kind of a selfish infomercial. We learned last week that our graduating class for our licensed practical nursing group in December have a 100% pass rate on the NCLEX. So we are very excited that we are getting that level of pass rate out there into the community ready to work and take care of us. All right, thank you. And thank you also to Elevate for partnering with us on this. We'll go ahead and get this started.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bowman. We also have several city, county, and former elected officials in the audience with us today. Would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you. And of course, I want to thank you, the audience, who support this event through your attendance and participation each year. Now, to introduce our legislative guests, but before I do, on behalf of the Rapid City area community and Elevate, I want to thank them for being here, to respect Senator David Johnson's comments from the last one about hard work, because you guys just love hard work, but being here and participating is really, really important and awesome and engaging with constituents. So thank you. So starting with introductions on my far right here, our far right, we have Representative Mike Derby from District 34. Senator David Johnson from District 33. And welcome new Senator Mike Walsh from District 35. Next to him, Senator Helene Duhamel, District 32. On the other side of the room, we have Representative Becky Drury from District 32. 34. She did switcheroo. And Representative Steve Duffy from District 32. All right, each legislator will have 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to audience questions. If you haven't submitted questions yet, please flag down a team member, and we'll get a form from you. So, Representative Derby.
Good morning. Welcome. I'm Mike Derby. I'm state representative for District 34, and that covers West Rapid City. A little about me. This is my 10th year in the House. I've served 8 years on appropriations, and I did serve 3 terms under Governor Bill Janklow and took a little break and came back, and just honored, and it's a pleasure to represent District 34 in the state of South Dakota. I'm also chair of House Appropriations, and I'm co-chair of the Joint Committee on Appropriations. I serve with Senator Hunhoff as co-chair. Appropriations is the only committee that's joint. It's half senators, 9 representatives, and we serve together. The appropriations bill goes back and forth. Last year was a Senate bill, and this year it's a House bill, and so I am chair. I chair all the meetings this year for the Joint Committee on Appropriations. And so I'm going to give you a little update on appropriations. And first of all, this is legislative day 25 we just finished. We have 13 days left. My Joint Committee on Appropriations, we have 4 days to deal with 39 bills. If you want to see what our agenda is the next 4 days starting Tuesday, it's all online. We've got 39 bills to take a look at and figure out. We just recently spent with what's called revenue budget setting. We take a look at future revenues. We look 16 to 17 months into the future and try to figure out where the state's headed. We take all sorts of information from the governor's Advisory Committee on Economics, the Economic Advisory Committee. Our own Marnie Herman is on that committee, and we take that information and look into our crystal ball. I've got 5 copies of the adopted budgets for fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. Fiscal year 25 starts July 1st. We adopted in fiscal year 24 a $2.4 billion general fund budget. Keep in mind, our total budget's $7.3 billion, so $4.9 billion of our dollars that we deal with are federal dollars. A lot of it goes into the Department of Social Services, Department of Human Services, education, transportation. So it gives you a kind of a balance on that. I want to talk briefly about a bill I've been working hard on and concerned about. Maybe you can put up SB 134, if you could, please. I want to take a minute to talk about that, and then I'll just close with kind of an overview. But SB 134 is, you can see, make an appropriation to create the Healthy Forest Critical Infrastructure Relief and Grant Program. This is to help support our timber industry in the Black Hills. We are in crisis mode. The annual harvest numbers have been going down, and COVID actually made it even worse. It had a direct impact, COVID did, on what we're facing now, because they weren't able to get out into the forest, couldn't put 2 people in a pickup, all sorts of things, weren't able to mark the trees as they could. So the harvest number has actually been impacted by a couple years ago with COVID. That might seem hard to believe, but that is actually the truth. But the industry is in crisis, and we're very concerned about, particularly, for example, Nyman Industries in Spearfish. They're the large landscape timber harvester, and the numbers don't support the industry moving forward. I'm very concerned about that. A little bit on what the status is. It passed through Senate State Affairs 8-0. We have support from Lawrence County, Pennington County, and Meade County. They've all passed resolutions supporting the bill, along with almost every mayor. And I just want to let you know that bill, SB 134, will be in front of my committee, Joint Committee on Appropriations, on Tuesday. So anything that you can get a hold of, those committee members would be very helpful. And last, what do I have, a minute left? I want to close with just a thought. Political dialogue. I'm going to read a quote. The main aim of the political dialogue should be to resolve the problems of the state, not to find who is the winner and who is the loser. That's not what it's all about. It's to try and find an answer that is acceptable to all parties concerned, which would, of course, require some give and take. That's from Aung San Suu Kyi. And I thought, who is that? I'm running out of time. She's from Burma, Nobel Prize winner. She was kept in detention for 2 decades, and her party won an overwhelming victory in 1990, but was denied power by the military. I just hope we never get to that point. Thank you very much.
So good morning. I'm David Johnson. I'm a state senator for District 33. That's Mary V's neighborhood, and she's my biggest supporter, I think, in District 33, other than my wife, perhaps. Anyway, I wanted to, if I can get the folks here with the overhead to go to the Senate agenda for Tuesday, the 20th or the 21st. Can you find that? What I wanted to do is just give everybody here an idea of the type of things that are on the agenda for the Senate floor on one day, next Tuesday. And that way you'll get an idea of the variety of issues that we're going to be discussing. Just the Senate. Perfect, thank you. So the Senate is obligated to authorize and appoint or to approve of the governor's appointments to certain boards and commissions. So what we're going to be doing is appointing or approving of the governor's appointment to 2 or 3 people to the Board of Education, to the standards of the Board of Education. That's the first thing the Senate will be doing when we convene next Tuesday. Then if you look down the list, you see that we're going to be discussing issues in state law, specifically statutory laws about invoicing, how a school board in South Dakota can invoice or make payments on invoices. We're going to be talking about property tax relief for disabled veterans. We're going to be talking about the nomination process for statewide officers. We're going to be talking about double taxation of prizes at fairs and amusement parks. Quite a variety, and that's why I'm telling you this, so that you can understand. I mean, we go from A to Z, and this is just in one day, and it's just the Senate. Medical cannabis for parolees. We're going to be debating that on the floor. We're going to be talking about vacating certain highways so that the Department of Transportation has less expense. Perhaps it should go to a township or to a county. We'll be talking about medical questions and application of medical procedures to students in public schools. My bill, Senate Bill 199, we're going to be talking about the consolidation or boundary changes to counties. That's a statute that's well over 100 years old. It hasn't been changed. We're going to talk about that. We'll be talking about joint custody, joint parental physical custody of a minor child. and we're going to be talking about questions about the state bar. And none of us are, well, there's a few lawyers out on the Senate floor, but not very many. And I'm just going to stop there because the point is just to let you know that we do discuss a lot of things, especially this time of year. The last 3 weeks are contentious, a lot of debate, occasional temper. It just what I call the political thermometer gets pretty high. I mean, it's like 120 degrees on the political thermometer, and at this point in time in the session, it's rising. So I want to take time to introduce the A-team at Black Hills Works. My yellow t-shirts are here. Every single Cracker Barrel, I'm going to introduce the people from the A-team at Black Hills Works. Daniel and Janelle today specifically. Thank you, folks. If you have any questions about Black Hills Works, these are the people. So thank you again for coming. And then last time I got a little bit mouthy about saying thank you to the people that are up here. I don't appreciate people saying thank you to legislators. We know what we're getting into. But last time when I said that, I got the following text back from a real good friend of mine who was sitting back there. He's here again today. He said, "Good morning, Dave. Good job on the airport bill. Oh, thanks for all that you do for the people in your district, the Black Hills area, and South Dakota." So I think that was a pretty sly trick. I won't tell you how I responded to him. I can't say those words. It was all in fun. I do appreciate the concern that people have for the legislators. It is hard work, but we know what we're getting into, and so I just want to thank the community for coming out and supporting us during these Cracker Barrels.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Senator Johnson. Next up, we have Senator Mike Walsh.
Well, good morning. Yeah, my name is Mike Walsh. Senator Johnson just spoke about the last 3 weeks being contentious. Now, I have exactly 2 days of experience being dropped in the middle of that, so I'm pretty excited, as you can tell. Yeah, a little bit about me. I retired not quite 3 years ago from law enforcement. Spent 26 years in law enforcement. Started out as a part-time correction officer making $6 an hour and retired as a captain, commander of the patrol division. Had a great career. I got to do everything you can imagine. But outside of that, I got to volunteer for a lot of things as well. I've been a fraternal order police member for a very long time. In fact, served as the state president for the last 11 years. Just resigned on Tuesday prior to Wednesday happening. So I have been blessed to be able to take care of people within the FOP. And as you can imagine, within the FOP, there's all different types of law enforcement officers. And I was fortunate enough to be able to listen to them and hear all their different perspectives, whether it was from a large city or a small town. Big county, small county, didn't make a difference. And I'm hoping that prepared me for this position, being able to listen to all perspectives, because from my viewpoint, I think probably this is what it's all about, is listening to those perspectives. Prior to going into law enforcement, I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years, a little over 5.5 to be more accurate. I was blessed to be able to do a couple of deployments. I got to go all over the world. And my wife is a major in the United States Air Force Reserve. I say reserve, and you might think that means a weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. No, she's gone all the time. She's currently in Miami because that's when they need hers during the winter in South Dakota. I've figured out that game as well, but that's okay. I might go down and visit her. She's a reservist, but she's always on active duty, and so that leads me into exactly what my priorities are. Military is very near and dear to my heart. Having been deployed and being the spouse of someone who's deployed, it's very important for me for military, veterans, and veterans' families. Law enforcement obviously is very important to me. Throughout my career, those 26 years, 13 of those years was as either a detective or a detective sergeant. And I worked primarily crimes against persons, which means I got to help victims. I'm hoping that experience continues with this, being able to help people, not necessarily victims, but potentially in the legislation that we're hoping to hear. Obviously, I'm new. I want to listen to everybody, particularly the people up here. Been fortunate to meet a lot of people this week. I'm going to hear a lot of things. And I guess my perspective on everyone within the legislature is I'm going to listen to everybody. I may not vote the same way as them. I may not agree with them, but I'm going to work with them. And I look forward to doing that. Everyone has a voice, and hopefully I can represent that. And I am from District 35, and that includes the base, obviously. So I'm particularly interested in the military matters. My email, I believe, is up on the website now. Please feel free to email me, call me, whatever you'd like to do. I'm happy to listen to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Next up, we have Senator Helene Duhamel.
Good to see everyone here today. It still remains a high honor to serve in the legislature, and I'm so glad so many of you are engaged. We've been a little short-handed West River. Thankfully, we now have Senator Walsh, and he serves in judiciary with me, and he has exactly the experience we need. He's a great addition. He's going to help us a lot. Senator Mike Diedrich remains very ill, and so we all need to keep praying for him. And Representative Chris Conzett now is also in the legislature. We hoped she would join us today, but we are getting up to speed, and this is the time where we really need support for South Dakota issues, but things that are extremely important to us, West River. Water. You might be wondering how that's coming along. We're still fighting hard behind the scenes to fully fund the pipeline for Missouri River water all the way to western South Dakota. We're asking for ARPA dollars, roughly $2.5 million, out of the hundreds of millions we've been given that still have to be spent. It's a pittance. It's a drop in the bucket. But this week is a critical week. A lot of people are eyeing the ARPA dollars, and they need to be spent by December of 2026. So we want $2.5 million to fully fund our study. That makes $13 million. And then once we're engineered, we think it jumpstarts the whole program by 2 years. We get on the Bureau of Reclamation list, and we can really use the momentum and try to get that project going. It's probably 20 years in the making, but just like planting a tree, you can't do it too soon. The three big things we are looking, and we look at these as state priorities, but in particular interest to western South Dakota, funding for airports. The Fed's funding has not increased in years. This is true economic development, especially for our area that lives and dies on tourism. Frankly, for the whole state, it's a golden goose. These folks come, they leave their dollars, and we don't have to educate their kids. Tourism is a wonderful industry. So we really want to make sure that we prioritize our airport funding. The forest. We got to keep the Black Hills forest alive, and the timber industry is teetering on collapse. This is a dire situation, so we need to do everything we can right now to make sure we can keep it alive and survive, and that's some of what Representative Derby was talking about. And the Douglas Ellsworth School. We have these B-21 family members coming in the very near future. The federal government has invested $2 billion of construction at Ellsworth Air Force Base right now. That's on base. That's not Box Elder. That's on the base. If you look at the sales tax and the excise tax, South Dakota receives $84 million from that $2 billion in construction. All they're asking of us is to pay for a quarter of an elementary school. That's $15 million. We think it's the least we can do to support the military that potentially will bring more B-21 bombers to this base. These people are in the best fighting machine in the world, in the nation. The B-21 bomber, they don't want their kids educated in mobile homes. County funding. People are complaining about their property taxes. The bulk of that does go to education, but property taxes also is how the county funds their services. So we, this session, are looking at lots of ways to lift the burden. One way in particular, very creative, indigent legal services. This is important because South Dakota is one of only 3 states where each county has to deal with it on their own. So we have 66 versions. If you're thinking of big picture solutions, why not regionalize? Why not make it a state office? We have legal deserts where we have counties without even an attorney. So the idea here is to form an office of indigent legal services and then fund it with a quarter of the alcohol tax. so you have ongoing funding that can increase with time. Very creative idea, and if passed, potentially would be one of the most significant pieces of legislation in the last 4 decades, and very meaningful to counties. Do it better for our state. And finally, IT, same idea with counties. You know how in schools they all have the same email address, your name.k12.us, you know. We want to do the same thing for counties, because that's how nefarious people are coming in and getting into these cities and counties with email. So we're thinking about trying to do the same thing for counties and make an influx of funding and figure out a way to get everyone with the same email address. We got it figured out in Pennington and Minnehaha, but most counties don't. There's a better way to do it, and we're trying to look at that this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duhamel. Next up, we have Representative Becky Drury.
Good morning, everyone, and again, thank you, Western Dakota Tech, for hosting us this morning. It's nice to be here. I also want to give a shout out. We had Rapid City Day on Thursday at the Capitol, and it was so nice of so many of you to come and visit, go to the committee meetings, be around the Capitol. You fed us lunch, and it's just nice to have that hometown support. So we do appreciate you coming. So a lot of times we don't have a lot of time to visit with you. We went into caucus early that day. So that kind of maybe caused some hiccups. The roads are bad, and all those things. But we are so glad you came to visit us. I appreciate that. As stated, my name is Becky Drury. I'm in the House in District 34. I chair local government. I serve on state affairs, military and veterans affairs, and I'm also one of the majority whips. We have a timeline coming up on the 21st, which is called Crossover Day. And if you're not familiar with that, that means all the Senate bills have to be passed over or killed and then sent to the House, and same for the House. They either have to be passed over or killed and sent to the Senate. So there's a timeline coming up. And when you see these agendas posted, they need to be voted on and taken care of. So we have a little bit of a time crunch. Joint appropriations gets a couple more days because they're appropriations. They get special treatment, I guess. So I'm gonna say ditto to a lot of things that came up before. It's really important for the airport, the forest, Douglas schools, the IT. But what we struggle with here on this side of the state is we have less people and less representation. So I would ask that if you know people outside of the Black Hills area, you would encourage them to vote for these things as well. It can't all come from just the 5 of us or 6 of us. So we need help. We would appreciate help on those things. I'm going to touch on Douglas just for a moment. When that came to state affairs, I thought it was going to die. And I was a little emotional about it. I have a granddaughter that goes to Douglas. She's not a military child, but I've taken them out there to school. I picked them up from school. And this is just not another school. We need lots of schools across South Dakota. You know, Kadoka could use a new school. I'm sure Woolsey could use a new school. Lemon could probably use a new school. You could probably go to almost any county in the state and they could benefit from having their schools either remodeled, updated, or brand new. But Douglas is different. When I drop my granddaughter off, you don't see people dressed like this audience. You see some dressed like us, but what you see is you see people in their fatigues coming and dropping their children off and picking their children up. And they have their army boots on, and they are the people from all over the United States of America that have signed on the line to defend who? Us. They could be called out that very day and never see their child again because they are there to defend us. They're not there just to defend Box Elder or Rapid City or even South Dakota. These people come from all over the nation. They are families just like we have families and loved ones. And it almost seems disingenuous that with all the revenue we're building for them, that all the revenue that's going to the state, we can't support those people that put their lives on the line for us. So I want you to just think about that. It's a different school. And I would ask you to reach out to people to support that. Because I think those military people that defend us every day deserve to have their children educated. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Drury. Next up, we have Representative Steve Duffy.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Duffy. I'm from District 32, the House of Representatives. In my second year of the first term, you can't use the excuse anymore that you're newbie. Every time I try to say that, Becky shuts me up, so it won't work. Or Representative shuts me up. It is a what she just said is just so powerful. You know, I sat back and like to reflect on that a little bit. Here's the reality. I wasn't really going to say this, but we have the most advanced airplane on the planet coming here in 2 to 3 years. Most of those people are young men and women who fly those airplanes and care for them. And they're all in their child-producing years. And if we put those kids in mobile homes to educate them, that's a crime. That's a shame. We shouldn't do that. They should get a good education. So I hope, and the reality about Ellsworth and the financing of Ellsworth is it's different from every other school because the school district they get something called payment in lieu of property taxes, something like that. Yeah, and so, but you really can't bond against that money. So what they'd have to do is they'd have to take what would cost the Rapid City School District maybe $80 or $90 more in property tax a year to bond, would cost them $700. Well, there's some people missing in this panel right now, and a lot of them should be here. This is an issue that affects them and their district, and I'm very disappointed that they're not here to fight this fight. I've had some spirited conversations about that, but anyway, that's just emphasizing what Becky said. What we're experiencing is all over the state is growth. And one of the things that I'm working with Senator Johnson on the airport. We have a good airport here, and so Sioux Falls has a good airport here. What we're trying to say is the FAA has not funding airports like they used to, and for our two areas, that's a limiting factor for economics. I mean, people are moving here, and Sioux Falls, and like as an example, last year Sioux Falls Airport grew 9% in employments on 3% population. So people are coming and they're moving a lot more. Our airport has been growing. It had its biggest year ever in 2022. So that's growing. We're trying to get some help from the state because most of the airports that are getting funded for projects with the FAA have a state component and a local component. Nobody's saying we're asking the state to do everything. We're not. We're asking for some contribution for what it brings to the Rapid City Airport has about a $450 million economic impact on this area. That's huge. I mean, if we can put a little bit of money in there so they can expand a few more gates, what that it means is when airplanes want to come and fly in and out of Rapid City, they all want to come about the same time. Well, there's only so many gates. And so what happens is first of all, they upsize the airplanes. Now we're still full, so they upsize the price. And, you know, they'll call and say, do you have any slots for us? We'd like to come to your airport. What time do you want to land? Well, they want to land when everybody else wants to go, or they want to take off. Sorry, nothing available. So that's just holding the pricing up. And that's the same with Sioux Falls. We're asking for enough money into an aeronautics fund that would allow the State Aeronautics Commission to grant money for projects that have support to improve these airports. That's one thing. I'm on Commerce and Energy, and the second part of that title is energy. And we have had a boatload of pipeline, eminent domain bills. It's been unbelievable. And there's serious, serious emotions riding on those subjects. At one point the other night, we were meeting, normally we meet 2 hours every other day. We were meeting 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, 2.5 to 3 hours in the evening. And one of my co-representatives on that committee said, we got to walk out together. And it was a good thing we did that. I mean, that's just how emotional this issue is. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong on it. There's 2 bills that have come through that are the closest thing I've seen. They were from Representative Mortensen. Anyway, those have come out of the House. And I don't know where they are right now on the other side, but I got a red light, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative Duffy. Representative Kurt Massey was not able to make it today, but he did send a statement that he would like to share. He was at the last Cracker Barrel. Representative Massey's statement is, I am on the House Taxation Committee, so I can work to keep our taxes low. I'm on the House Judiciary Committee, so I can help keep our state and communities safe. I was also able to get onto the Medical Marijuana Oversight Committee so that District 33 has a seat and voice at that table. This year I brought House Bill 1215, an act to require study of radio communication services in the Piedmont Valley region and make an appropriation to perform the study and purchase of digital vehicular repeater systems. This bill is to address serious radio communication problems that our first responders and emergency personnel are experiencing in a 17-mile area along I-90 between exit 37 and exit 52 in Meade County, where their handheld radios do not work. This includes Blackhawk and Somerset, which are in my District 33. However, after working with several legislators on how I can best ensure I can secure funding for these radio issues, it was decided the best option would be for me to ask that my bill be tabled and seek the funding through another available option through the Joint Appropriations Committee and the South Dakota Department of Public Safety, which I am doing. Thank you for putting on the Cracker Barrel, and contact me with any questions. Representative Kurt Massey. With that, we will move into audience questions. And the very first one has to do around House Bill 1048. House Bill 1048, which would establish a minimum teacher salary of $45,000. The bill would withhold state funding for districts that fail to meet the minimum salary. What is your position on raising teacher pay?
I'm going to support 1048, and it might even make it difficult for the Rapid City School District. But here's why. We passed 7% increase last year for education. But the teachers don't necessarily get 7%, and then they're disappointed because they hear on the news, oh, 7%, but maybe it doesn't trickle down to an actual 7%. I think our school board in Rapid does a good job. I'm not saying they don't. They do. But the reason this came about is because we have such disparity in wages. And I think teachers should be one of the most honored professions we have. We're having a hard time getting teachers. They are the ones that teach us how to be everything we do. You think about it. Where would you be now if you didn't have some good teachers and good teachers along the way? Would you have your degree in accounting? Would you have your degree? Would you have a medical degree? Would you have be able to run a business? You wouldn't, not without teachers. So they're very important. And I just have always held in my heart that teachers in South Dakota need to be paid more. So I'm going to support the bill because I think they are one of the most honored professions and they should be paid well for their job.
Mike Derby, District 34 House. Looking at the metrics, I know we hear about average teacher salary, we rank 49th in the country. That's kind of the metric I've heard. And I asked during appropriations, we had Dr. Graves, he's the Secretary of Education. I mean, is that apples to apples? And yes, that's the standard metric. I asked him, where do we want to go? All of us like goals, and where do we want to go? He said, well, as a state, we'd like to at least move up to 45th. I mean, at least I got him on the record to say we need to move up. I'm trying to figure out, we got a lot of data, and Rapid City, everyone looks at their own district or school, and it's like, where we rank. So I'm conflicted right now for a reason. One is the number I saw for Rapid City School District was an average of 41,000. Is that the correct number? But total compensation, there's another column for benefits. And we're almost at the top for benefits. And so and I'm assuming that includes health insurance and vacation, the benefit side of it. So I've got to figure out, I'm on appropriations, I haven't dealt with these policy issues, but eventually it's going to come to money. But I'm wondering why the decisions have been made over the years. We have, a lot of people will go to work for the benefits package, correct? I mean, there's some people in the room here, hey, I want to have the benefits, salary, maybe not so much. But, so I have to figure out, why are we at 41,000, which is below the average in the state of South Dakota, but we have the highest benefits package? So anybody out there can help me that's on the board, that's where I'm at, and I need to get that information. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to address something. A lot of people are not aware. I wasn't aware 10 years ago. But when we hear terms like 7% to education, therefore teachers are getting a 7% salary increase, that's not the case. School boards in Rapid Cities, public schools across the state, with that 7% increase have to pay for personnel. They have to pay for the janitors out of that 7%, bus drivers, mechanics, counselors, security personnel. Everybody who works for the school board or for the school system is part of that 7% increase to education. So the school boards are burdened with spreading that 7% out among hundreds of staff, personnel, not just teachers. That's why we have a problem when we get a 7%, it doesn't go to the teachers. A lot of people don't understand that. Now, if you get 7% increase to nurses, nurses get 7%. But when you get 7% for education, that's split up among, again, hundreds of people. A lot of people are not aware of that. It took me a while to figure that out. So the school boards, the public schools across the state are in a bit of a pickle. I support teacher pay, public schools. I support, I think they're underpaid as well. I don't think you'll find anybody up here today that does not support our teachers, and I believe that they should be paid well. 45th, it'd be nice if we could get that. I'd like to be in the top 5 personally across the country. So.
All right, thank you, legislators. Next question deals around House Bill 1043. House Bill 1043 would have taxed lithium production. The bill was reconsidered in the Senate but ultimately failed. Please explain your position on the lithium tax.
Well, the lithium tax came before the Senate. It was sponsored in the House, prime sponsored by Representative Kirk Chafee from Sturgis. It came to the Senate. It passed through the House, came to the Senate with Senator Randy Dybert from Spearfish. Well, lithium, I spoke for about 10 minutes on the Senate floor to get this bill defeated, and I was successful, thankfully. The mining industry in the state of South Dakota is in its infancy. Lithium mining is kind of is mislabeled. There is no refining or there is no processing of lithium in South Dakota. This 5% tax would have been a 5% tax on zero. There is zero revenue to the state of South Dakota or to any county or municipality because lithium is not refined. In fact, it's not even mined in South Dakota at this time. 0% or 5% of zero is zero. 5% of nothing is nothing. This was a tax of 5% on lithium, which doesn't exist anywhere in the state of South Dakota. There are no lithium mine or refineries in the United States of America. This was a this is a bill that should have never got to the Senate. It's a tax bill. I don't know why it was even brought. There's zero income in this lithium mine. I mean, it's silly. I'm baffled by the fact that this got to the Senate. I can't explain it. I'd answer questions afterwards if you have specific questions about this. But thankfully, we were able to get this killed on the Senate floor.
On that bill, it came through the House, and when it got to the floor, I supported it. I did listen to some of the testimony. I think what Representative Chafee was thinking is, look, we have been in an oil economy for decades in this world. We are slowly moving to a rare earth minerals economy. We just built a new building on School of Mines that's going to study rare earth minerals. I mean, that's really where the future of probably a lot of energy, a lot of industry is. So the way I understand it, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is that everybody's trying to find a little help for the counties. I mean, the counties don't really have a pure funding source, and there is lithium in the Black Hills, and there are people that have, my understanding, I might be not perfect on this, but there are people that are looking at possibly mining some of that. Well, if they do, a lot of them are out of state or out of the country. South Dakota should get something for that if they do start digging this up. I hope it's permitted and I hope it's safe. We don't want any of that. But we should get something out of it. And he never said it was happening now. He said it's potential. And a lot of times you look at stuff so not like this mining or this eminent domain deal. We're fighting a deal now after a company's got $70 million invested. Well, that's not right to move the goalposts after it started. So maybe it's good to look at some of these things in advance and say, okay, let's put some guardrails in. We can tweak them if we need them. May never need them. Anyway.
Thank you. Moving on, next question is around Senate Bill 13. Senate Bill 13 changes the process for nominating Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, and Secretary of State. What is your position on Senate Bill 13 and the proposed changes?
Well, we worked on this last year without success. Twice failed in the House already this session, so this will be the third time's a charm. So here's the theory. Do you all know how you select the Secretary of State or the Attorney General? Do you know how that process works? Yeah, so you don't get to decide unless you're a committee person. Do you know what a committee man and a committee woman is? And do you know how that is selected if there's a race? The question is, everything else goes through a primary process. We trust the voter to decide who our governor will be. We trust her to decide who our sheriff, we trust you as the voter to decide to pick our sheriff, to pick our coroner. But you don't get to decide who will be our attorney general, who will be our secretary of state. That all goes through the committee process. So we're only one of 3 states that does it this way. And we think, in particular after the last convention, where we had just nominated and picked a governor, Nome, in primary, and then we went to convention, and at the convention, the delegates decided, it was a very close call between Lieutenant Governor Larry Roden getting to stay in that position or putting the governor's opponent, Howgard, as her lieutenant governor. So that was the first time it grabbed us like, huh, something's wrong here. The voter just told us that this is our governor, but her choice of lieutenant governor, and we had somebody who ran against Attorney General Marty Jackley, experienced Attorney General, but instead somebody who just 2 days before, when Attorney General Rounsberg was indicted and impeached by the Senate, and his right-hand man was accused, and we heard testimony that he had done things improperly. He was in the running for Attorney General. So we saw some things that we didn't like. So we feel like our outdated system in South Dakota, let the voters, let you decide who would like to vote on who our next Attorney General is. In this room, can you raise your hand? Who wants to be able to vote? Secretary of State, should you be able to vote? Or, so 120,000 people voted in the last primary. About 800 delegates, 0.1% gets to decide those positions right now. You don't get to vote. 120,000 people voted 2 weeks earlier, and they didn't get to decide on those positions. And we think the voter wants to. What more democratic thing to allow the voter to get to decide these really important races? Our top cop, Attorney General, our top person in charge of election integrity. I think the voter wants to have a say in these important races.
Well, I'm going to try not to come up and speak on every issue, but this was my bill last year. And a lot of people feel like I brought this because of the convention in 2022, the Republican convention. That's not the case. I brought this bill back in 2018, and it was defeated at that time. I brought this bill again last year. All it amounts to is that the true grassroots of South Dakota is every single one of you people in this room that is a registered voter. There's been a lot of hype, a lot of bumper sticker sayings out there that the grassroots are the convention people. I'm a precinct committee man for my party. But for 30 years, I've lived in my home. 30 years, I have never been contacted by a precinct committee person when I lived in my home. Not once. And now they're saying, well, the precinct committee people are the grassroots. You are the grassroots, and you have a right to vote for the people who are going to be filling those statewide positions. And it wasn't 800, Senator, it was 400. There were 400 people voting for those people instead of you. So this bill that the senator and I both support are saying that this election belongs to the people of South Dakota, not the 300 or 400 people that attend a session in Pierre every other year. That's what it's all about. I would expect a lot of support once the people of South Dakota understand what this is all about. You own the right to vote. That's what it's about.
Mike Derby, District 34. Can you put up House 1198, House Bill 1198? This was Representative Tordson's bill. This was what came through the House, and it did put where the governor can select the lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and attorney general, and then you can put who voted, how we voted. I did vote for this. There, whoop. There you go. Okay. Well, that's the beauty of the process. You can go on and you can ask me how I feel about it, but we voted. I voted for it. I'm proud to have voted for it. I'll stand up for it. I too am a precinct person. I served on the Central Committee of Pennington County Republicans. I'm a state legislator. Curiously enough, legislators can't vote at the convention. We don't get a vote at the convention, so I became a precinct person so I could be a part of the process. I think they tried to fix that fact at their central committee meeting to allow our local representatives and senators to vote at the convention, but as of this point, that failed. The turning point for me was, to follow up on Senator Duhamel, was when Mr. Haugard announced he's running for lieutenant governor on the Friday before the convention. He had just lost the gubernatorial race, got 25%. So, I mean, is that really how the system should work, where we don't get that opportunity prior? So I'm comfortable with it. It's in the Senate. It'll probably come back amended. If it comes back in this form, I'll vote for it. If it comes back just to have the governor select their lieutenant governor, I'll vote for that. But just want to let you know, you can see how we all feel right there. Thank you.
Very quickly, this is my analogy. In Rapid City, you get to vote for your city council people, correct? You know, we have all the wards, 2 people from each ward, and we elect them. The people in the wards get to elect them, right? And then we have a vote for mayor. Well, who gets to vote for mayor? Absolutely everyone. We do not, in the city limits, absolutely everyone in the city limits can vote for the mayor. We do not let the city council people pick the mayor. And so that's my analogy for how the convention process kind of works. You know, we as individual voters would like to have our say for mayor, and we did. And I think it should be the same way at the next level up. So that's how I kind of feel about this. We've had people bring in things about, well, you're going to bring in big outside money. Well, I'll tell you what, there can be any campaign that can bring in big outside money. Those people don't have to accept that money, or they can. But that's just part of the process. So for me, I want my daughters to be able to vote for these people, and this is particularly for the Republican Party. So I'm sorry all the Democrats in the room have to sit through this, but particularly this is a Republican issue. So I just think that I want, you know, my family to be able to vote for these positions as well.
Thank you. Next question, don't have a bill number, but this is around airport expansion. Why should the state fund an airport expansion? Where would the funds be used for where would the funds to be used for the expansion come from, and which industries generate these revenues?
So this is my bill again. Airports and trees. I haven't had a chance to talk about trees yet, but yeah, this is my bill. Yeah, I'll get there, apparently. Seriously, I'm trying not to get up at but these are my bills, and this airport bill is a request for state funding to the tune of $90 million over 5 years, which is $18 million for the next 5 years. It's already been reduced by the Appropriations Committee. We're hearing rumbling that it's now down to 50 million. And there are also rumblings that we might be as low as 25 million. It sounds like a lot of money. The annual economic impact of aviation in South Dakota is $907 million annually. We're asking for the state of South Dakota, through its general funds, to put some money back into the airports. Right now, the state of South Dakota spends somewhere between $3 and $6 million for between 55 and 60 airports in South Dakota, somewhere between 3 and 6 million. The state of South Dakota spends $270 million annually on roads and highways. Okay, let's think about it. $270 million for roads, and that doesn't include the $750 million that the feds put into our roads. So here you go. You've got $1 billion annually for highways and roads, and you've got somewhere between 3 and 6 million for our airports. Now, if you compare apples to apples, the number of people emplaned and deplaned in our airports is just as much or more than what we have driving on our highways. The purpose of this funding is because the Rapid City Regional Airport has limited seasonal gates, as the representative discussed earlier. The rental car area is congested. There's limited holding room capacity. TSA screening area is about 20 years behind. Limited overnight parking for airplanes, labor-intensive, outdated baggage holding areas. Our airports are seriously behind. I always like to say that, I love this, if you build 1 mile of road, if you build 1 mile of highway, then you can get 1 mile down the road. If you build 1 mile of runway, you can get anywhere in the world. Let's keep that in mind.
This is, I'm the prime in the House on on Senator Johnson's bill. I didn't come to it as something where I said, you know what we need is more government money to the airports. What I do know, I'm not from here, I'm from central South Dakota, but I've lived here since college, 43 years. I've used this airport a lot from when it was nothing. It is a good airport, but what's happened in Rapid City is people have discovered Rapid City. I don't know how many of you have moved here in the last few years, but a lot of people have moved here, which moved me to run for office, because that's an unsettling thing for me. So what we do need, though, is economic development for people to move here who will move jobs here, or who will grow jobs here. If people can live here or stay here, more importantly, or move back here because of opportunities, well, airports are a huge economic factor. They need transportation, they need affordable housing, they need good schools. But airports are critical infrastructure, and the FAA is not really doing that job anymore. So what we need is to give some skin in the game. Passengers are going to have to pay some more, the airlines are going to have to pay more, concessionaires are going to have to pay more. But to improve these airports will overall improve our economic opportunities. We're going to have a ton of people from California coming when the B-21 gets here from where they're building that airplane. So this is not going to slow down, and so that's why I got on board with this thing, and I feel it's really the most important thing for me this year to try to figure out if we can help these airports help us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next question is around House Bill 1202. The A-Team Leadership Board supports House Bill 1202 as a excuse me, as a much-needed improvement to current state rules that have created confusion and ambiguity for people with disabilities, families, and community support providers. Do you support House Bill 1202, and if not, why? A curveball. We can come back to that one, maybe with the representatives. I'm going to move on to Senate Bill 134. Many small businesses around the Black Hills experienced hardships during the pandemic. Senate Bill 134 only supports one specific industry. Why is the timber industry different and deserving of more support than other industries?
That's a great question. Mike Derby, State Representative. Well, in talking with the governor about this issue, and as a matter of fact, is this being live streamed?
I believe so.
Does it go to Peer?
The internet goes everywhere.
Okay, I'm just being a little facetious, but at this point in time, Governor Noem is not supportive of this bill for kind of that same reason. And I hope at some point in time she will be supportive of it, because we do need Governor Noem's help to pass Senate Bill 134. Nobody probably in the state knows more about this issue than Governor Noem. When she was in Congress, when talking with her, she had a bottle with a pine beetle in it as a daily reminder at her desk in Congress every day about what happens if the pine beetle got away and the forest was destroyed. You're probably going to get, and so at the end of the day, we hope for her support. I believe that the way we're trying to fund it through COVID dollars is the right way to do it. I have proof that that's a good way to look at it. This is a big issue. This is a big issue. Is it different? Yes. If we let the Black Hills be unmanaged, and in 10 years through pine beetles and growth, and it burns down, I call it the big one, the big fire. It's going to affect tourism. It's going to affect water quality. It's going to affect all those homeowners in the hills. And yes, there's probably one beneficiary that's going to get the bulk of it, and it's Nyman Industries. I'm just going to say it. That's true, along with all the other truckers that are all the ancillary industries. But if Nyman Industries goes away, they have about $157 million of investment in spearfish. If they go away and the workers go away, it ain't coming back. I say ain't. It ain't coming back. $20 million is a small investment for an insurance policy to keep the industry alive and well. And yes, I understand. You could look at a local business and say the same thing, but if that local business burns down, it doesn't burn down the entire Black Hills of South Dakota. I'm hoping the governor will get on board. Nobody knows more about this issue than her. She has the same concern that was just expressed in the question, but I believe we can help get over the finish line. As a matter of fact, we're meeting with Senator Rounds Tuesday night about this very topic in Pierre, so stay tuned. Thank you.
Well, good morning. So this is the last time I'm going to come up here, because this one is about trees. Okay, so why is one business being identified here as special treatment? What about, if we don't have if we don't have a healthy Black Hills National Forest, what about every single homeowner who lives anywhere near the Black Hills? What about tourism industries? What about tourism businesses? Don't you think they'll be affected by this? If we're not managing our forest, because folks, don't kid yourself, the National Forest Service does nothing in the Black Hills as far as logging and maintaining our forest. They put out contracts to loggers and to Nyman industry type businesses to mine or to harvest our forest products. If Nyman goes away, there are no foresters, there's no tourism, there's no hunting, there's no fishing, there's no lodging. How about camping? How about all the loggers? How about all the truck drivers? You don't think this affects all of those businesses? Personally, it impacts every one of those workers and every one of those businesses. Keep in mind also, this is what's called ARPA money. This isn't South Dakota tax money. This is American Rescue Plan Act. This is federal money, and where better to spend it than on backing up what the National Forest Service is supposed to be doing. They're not managing our forest. And Nyman Industries, the only company that logs or that harvests timber, will go away if we don't manage our forest. National Forest Service is not going to do it. It was back in 2018, I wrote up a resolution for the entire legislature about national forests and maintaining a healthy forest. That resolution went through unanimously through both the House and the Senate, that every single legislator is in support of a healthy Black Hills National Forest. That support has wavered a bit since that time. That's in the last 6 years. If you have questions about the National Forest Service, if you have questions about your quality of life as residents of the Black Hills area, come to me and talk to me. There's a lot of people who want to protect our Black Hills. 20 million from the feds, not a penny of your general fund money is going to this. Thank you.
I might add quickly, and you may not agree, but we had a lot of money that went to childcare. Were you aware of that? Checks. They didn't tell them how they had to spend it, but they went to every child care that we could identify in the state. It's the same idea here. Do we want to keep an industry alive? The forest, in some cases, is just terribly overforested. It has not been thinned. The work has not been done. In many ways, we're like a match, just waiting to light up one big fire. The Black Hills is not that big. So we want to take care of our quality of life, what we have, and of course the economics that go with a healthy forest.
Thank you. The next question is around House Bill 1065. 1065 would provide $8 million for a new multi-use facility on the state fairgrounds. What is your position on House Bill 1065?
Okay, Mike Derby, State Representative, House Bill 1065, construction of a multi-use building on the grounds of the State Fair. That is in process right now. It's going to be in front of the Joint Committee on Appropriations this next week. One of the things that we do in a House caucus is we ranked 39 different one-time uses, and then because as the chair of appropriator, I'm trying to be an honest broker in this whole process and go with what the caucus priorities are. I didn't sponsor any bills. I didn't prime any bills. And it's kind of my marching orders to help work the caucus priorities through the process. So specifically, we haven't heard 1065 in Joint Committee on Appropriations. It did end up as a priority issue for the caucus. So I kind of maybe foreshadow some things there.
should never say anything bad about somebody else's bill, but this particular facility in the state fair has already received a lot of money. Representative Derby, do you know how much they've already received for the decks? 20 million is what I think. So this is for a facility at the state fair that burnt down. Now they want another 8 million for a sheep barn. I just look at that and I compare that to the Ellsworth Douglas School and the economic development that goes with what's happening at Ellsworth Air Force Base. I don't know if we've done a good enough job explaining to the state the unique things that are out west in western South Dakota and why these are important investments that will continue to throw off money and lift taxes for the whole state, revenue coming in, and help all school districts. No question, this will help some families who work with sheep. But that seems like such a small group when we have airport funding. How many of you fly out of anywhere other than Rapid City or Sioux Falls? When I look at keeping our forest alive and the tourism and our quality of life, when we only have a certain amount of money, seems to me that we do need to prioritize. And a sheep barn, to me, falls down at the bottom of my list.
I don't have an issue with the sheep barn per se, but this brings up a huge point about just our reality. A third of the people live west of the river, 2/3 live east. I said at one point, I said, between this 90 million on the airport and the sheep barn or any number of other projects, it's more compact, and I said, I can look you square in the eye and say, what will impact more people in the state of South Dakota? I said this about the prison. Who's going to use more? What are we going to use more of? Or more, are you going to use the airports or the prison? Raise your hand if you're going to use the prison. My point is, we are outmanned, and it's been so clear to me in the last week how different our reality is, and it's actually heartbreaking at some point, but it's real, and then, we don't even have our full contingent out here that pulls in the same direction. We have a splinter of that, and it's hard. I mean, when the governor says, look, I'm not going to help pick a thing. I'm not going to help Douglas. Half of the contingent that represents him doesn't support it. Well, that sends a message. She's got cover to do what she wants, even though we know Ellsworth is a huge economic driver for the state of South Dakota. 4.2 cents of every dollar these people spend goes to the state coffers. We get the local tax on their spending, but anyway, it's heartbreaking to me at times.
So I pulled up Becky Drury, District 34. I pulled up a press release. 16 million came from the state last year, and then they had 6 million pledged, and it was to replace a sheep barn. The DEX facility was to replace a sheep barn that had been demolished over the years and through some storms. So now they're back with another sheep barn. So at some point in time, we have to be careful because people will keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So is it never ending for the state fair? I don't know. I don't have a problem that we gave them the DEX money last year, but I really do think, just like Senator Duhamel said, where's our priorities? Is our priority a sheep barn, or is our priority children? If I have to weigh the two, I certainly know which one I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick those children.
Thank you. The next question is around House Bill 1199. What is the Uniform Commercial Code, and what is your position on House Bill 1199?
Okay, if we take a look at specifically 1199, Mike Derby, State Representative, that is to repeal, that was a repeal certain provisions of the Uniform Commercial Code. We had a previous bill to adopt the Uniform Commercial Code. This repealer failed to be put on the calendar. It was failed in House State Affairs, 12-1. It was smoked out. If you're familiar with the smoke-out term, if something fails in committee, a certain percent of the people on the floor support bringing it to the floor, then it's smoked out, it's brought to the floor. But then the next step is you have to calendar it. And that takes a majority of the vote to calendar it. And so then that failed. So right now 1199 is dead. And you can see on the vote, if you put the vote up there, I'm pretty sure I voted not to calendar it. I'm supportive of the UCC as drafted. There were some concerns. The Bankers Association, it's all about central bank digital currency. There was a companion bill that took care of that issue. In my mind, the UCC is what it is. It's a uniform commercial code. It's to allow banks and other businesses in the financial worlds, especially, to do business across state lines. It's uniform commercial code. And so our goal is to keep that as uniform as possible across state lines so banks have some, ability and finality on how they do business. So I'm in favor. I voted for the UCC last year. There were concerns. I believe those were addressed with the Bankers Association companion bill, and that's where that stands right now.
Yes, the bill referenced is gone, but different bills, better, are moving through. And again, this is a lot like last year. There was no boogeyman. We just had to bring it back and separate out to let people know it wasn't in it, but there would be no support of a central bank digital currency. But the Uniform Commercial Code, if you want to do business with other states, it's a no-brainer. We need this. We're a big state with banking and trust business, and both of these are going to sail through. It just took a year to make that happen.
Thank you. The next question is for Representative Mike Derby. Can you please provide an update on the $200 million that was allocated last year for low-income housing? At the last Cracker Barrel, you had indicated you were disappointed in progress.
Okay, Mike Derby, District 34. Great question. I wish I had a definitive answer on that because it was moving forward just a little slower than we wanted. I know there's some Rapid City developers that have been waiting for that money. They were waiting for guidelines on the agreement. And I hope money's going out the door by now, but I'm not sure. I'll try and get an answer here. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is around House Bill 1206 and Senate Bill 204, which both of those bills would provide funding for Douglas schools. How does school funding impact national security and benefit the state?
So I'm the new guy, but I will try and answer this. As I previously stated, I've been very involved in the military since the age of 17 when I went to boot camp. It affects national security in this. As previously stated by someone, the B-21 is the most advanced bomber in the world. The world's ever seen. The people who are going to be using that, maintaining it, flying it, and the support squadrons, if you will be supporting those particular units, best in the world. If we want to attract the best in the world for the best and most advanced, most technological piece of equipment in the world, we need to attract the best and we need to have the best amenities. So when we talk about a school affecting national security, it does, peripherally, certainly. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that they're going to be making national security decisions at that school, but it absolutely affects the quality of the airmen that will be coming here. To look at it any other way, I think you're discounting the quality of person, quality of airmen, quality of pilot, quality of commanders that will be coming here, and all as I said, all the other support people that come along with that. Having been in the military, in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps bases are known to have really kind of less than stellar towns outside the base. We didn't attract the best people at some of those in some of those towns. It didn't affect how we did our job, didn't affect our mission readiness, but it affected the quality of people that would come to those bases. If you've ever heard of a place called 29 Palms in California, it's also called 29 Stumps. There aren't 29 trees there. It's in the middle of nowhere, and nobody wants to go there. Yet we're putting a lot of Marine Corps units there, but not the best. Not the best people, unless forced, which can happen. People will be forced there. I would hate to see the same thing happen to the city of Box Elder. Not get the best people because airmen are concerned about the quality of life of their family members. And so peripherally, sure, but it absolutely affects national security. I will correct your representative. They're not Army boots. They're combat boots. Yeah.
I will just add that the Ellsworth Development Authority said exactly what you said, that these folks will prioritize their families and their children over their own careers. They have lots of choices. They can go fly for the airlines and make a lot of money. They will leave the Air Force before they sacrifice what they think is a good education for their children and their families. This is important to our state. It is truly important to every school district in our state. It's hard to get people to understand that because we're all bickering over money. And every school district, including Rapid City, needs resources and help to build schools. But if we don't do this, we potentially endanger future advancement in that base. Right now, we're only getting how many B-21s? 40? They say they may need as much as 250 in the long run because all that's happening with China and Russia in the world today. We are perfectly situated to even house more B-21s, but people won't want to come here. It'll be low on their priority list if we don't give them a good school. Thank you.
Thank you. Question for Senator Duhamel. Before we focus on building a pipeline from the Missouri River, should we protect the Rapid Creek watershed and Lake Pactola from gold mining?
I don't have a problem with mining. I think that we have the best mining institute in the United States, and I think they can do it right. I don't think that the two go hand in hand. We need to think about our future water needs. The Madison Aquifer is not recharging fast enough given our population growth, given the trajectory, given our times of drought. We are already in water need now. So I don't think you have to pit one against the other and say, I don't want anyone to do some certain industry. We need to secure a clean water source from the Missouri River, and that stands above and beyond everything else. But we're looking to bring water to western South Dakota. For us, drinking water, it's not about mining. We want to bring water because we need it, and we know we need it right now.
Thank you. This one doesn't have a bill attached to it, but the question is, what is being done to support firefighter training efforts in the Black Hills?
Yeah, I'm wondering about who's out there sabotaging me. This was my bill, all right? It's trees, airplanes, and firefighters. Yeah, I have a request in right now for just a little over $4 million to build a facility that is already under construction, just a short distance from here. It's on South Creek Drive. It's a firefighter structure that offers 22 different types of training for firefighters. That's from volunteers all the way down to municipalities and county firefighters and state firefighters for that matter. Everything from trench collapse rescue, building collapse rescue, 4-story building fires so that our firefighters can get training on rescuing people in a burning building from the 3rd floor, 4th floor, etc. This is the 3rd year I brought this bill. It's always, well, it's been failed. The very first year we got $850,000 from state general funds, from our tax dollars. And since, we were asking for $4 million at the time, and so I keep bringing this back, I think, by repeatedly bringing it to the legislature, that eventually we can get some state funding for that building. So it's for every single volunteer fire department to bring their volunteers to this building so that they can train. They need accreditation. Fire departments need accreditation in these different types of rescues. It's for volunteers, it's for the county firefighters, state firefighters, and municipal firefighters. I've been working with the Rapid City Fire Department on this for 4 years now.
Just an update, that's Senate Bill 83, correct? And that is up in Joint Committee on Appropriations on Friday, February 23rd.
Okay, we're getting some questions in online here, but I'm going to go, any takers on House Bill 1202 from the Julie Kopp and the A-Team Leadership Board? The question again was, the A-Team Leadership Board supports House Bill 1202 as a much-needed improvement to current state rules that have created confusion and ambiguity for people with disabilities, families, and community support providers. Do you support House Bill 1202, and if not, why?
This bill has come out of committee. Can you go back to the history and where it's at? And then it was deferred to another day in the House of Representatives. So we haven't heard it yet on the floor, but it did come out 12-1. And I haven't read the bill, but I just want you to know I'm very supportive, generally very supportive of community support providers and what they do for the state of South Dakota. I think my track record last year in getting additional monies, 100% methodology, would prove that out, and we'll be moving down the home stretch here with a couple other bills that I hope will help community support providers. Thank you.
So that bill came up in Health and Human Services. I don't think anybody here is on that committee in the House. So what we do is, that will be on the House floor Tuesday. So what we do behind the scenes is, when we don't know about a bill and we see it's coming up, we either A, listen into the committee testimony so we know what's going on with the bill, and or we go to somebody in that committee that voted pro and con for it and ask them why they voted pro and why they voted con, so we can get up to date on the bill. Because as you know, like, there are over 400 bills filed. We can't know everything about every bill. But before this hits the floor on Tuesday, I can pretty much guarantee that Representative Duffy and I will both be digging into it so we know how to vote. And we don't just rely on what's said on the House floor, because learn a lot from that committee testimony, and you learn a lot from your fellow legislators. So at first brush, I would probably say, yeah, it's a good bill because that came out of committee very positively. But as my job, I will either and listen to the testimony from committee and then talk to those committee people.
Thank you. A general question here, is anything being done to address increasing property taxes?
I think everything we're doing for counties, all those efforts are trying to stabilize at least the county's request for continued funding. The counties don't have anything but property taxes and some fees. The schools get funding from all the different sources, including the state. And the cities and the state both get sales tax. That doesn't go to counties. And in the long run, the big fix is it probably should, especially when you deal with tourism and the tourists could help you pay for that. But as of right now, it doesn't. So the counties are hamstrung, and we are looking for lots of ways to lift the burden of these unfunded mandates. The state has continued to tell the counties what they need to do for decades without ever giving any resources. And yet the state has the resources with the sales tax. So that's one of the things we're working on very hard.
So as I mentioned earlier when I opened up today, there is some property tax relief still alive and will be heard on the Senate floor on Tuesday for disabled veterans. There is some effort there to reduce property taxes for that particular group of citizens. Frankly, most of the rest of the property tax issues were brought up at very early in session, and most of them have failed.
Thank you. Next question is around House Bill 1251. House Bill 1251 changes how municipalities annex ag land adjacent to city limits. Why are we changing the process, and what is your position on 1251?
Twelve 1251 came up in local government, and then it made it to the House floor, and I believe it was defeated there. I was against 1251, first of all, because it gave a carve-out for ag land, and we already have a definition in code for what ag land is. Second of all, it would have given, when you go out and annex property, I think a lot of people didn't understand this, is that you don't change their ag designation for taxation. So we have ag land within the city limits of Rapid. But what this bill would have done is, instead of entrusting it to our county commissioners to deal with the annexation, it would have given a property owner who had at least 20 acres the ability to stop the annexation. Now the annexation, then you get a checkerboard of things, which makes it hard to put in your utilities, your sewer and your water and your power and those types of things. So you could have had one property in the middle, and then all this around would have been annexed. And then to deliver all those services creates a major hiccup. Now remember, that one property in the middle can still stay ag land. But changed the definition, so only half of it, I believe, had to be really used for ag land. So you could have had the front part of the property would have been, used for something else, but as long as you had that 10 acres in the back and you're calling it ag land for, I don't know, you have 5 goats back there or whatever, that's And I just thought it was odd that we were gonna change the definition of what ag land was and to make it virtually impossible for our elected officials to, you know, do the annexation.
Thank you. The next question, the governor wants to put all available surplus funds into the prison fund. Is this the best way to pay for prisons, and are there alternative ways to use these dollars?
Since I'm the closest, I'm gonna say we should put a significant amount, and I don't know what that is yet, because that's gonna be determined after the rest of these things are done. But I do not have a problem bonding for part of that prison. I just don't. So to say that we're gonna have every single penny paid for it, I think might be a little unrealistic, especially with the fluctuating costs. So I don't have a problem with a portion of that being bonded, not the most, but just a portion, even if it's the smaller portion at the end.
I agree with what Becky, or Representative Drury just said. I'm too casual here, I get it. We could buy that prison, that's about a 100-year asset, or we could take a portion of that money, say a third of it, or say, yeah, a third of it, and bond that. We have a AAA rating. We're a very solid bet. People will loan us money. And we could do some of the things that we're talking about that would take care of the other side of that. I mean, we'll have the prison, and we need the new prison, I get that. But we also need airports, and we need water. We need some other things that if we could use some of that money, and you could exponentially grow some of these other advantages for the economic development of the state. I don't know where it's going to go. The governor's very set on this, but I'm hoping we have an opportunity to fund some of these other projects, and we'll just see what happens.
Mike Derby, State Representative. So last week, just a little background, we finally set our revenue setting, and so then we were able to take a look at our budget versus the governor's budget for fiscal year 24. And so if our number's higher, then that means there's some additional one-time funds available for legislative priorities. So when the dust settled, we had 41 million over the governor's budget available. And so that's where we're looking at, where's that 41 million going to go? Put that up against the legislative priorities. And as far as being an appropriator, part of my job was to provide options. And so I put together a sheet on all the bonding, how much bonding's available left to do for the state of South Dakota. Is now a good time to bond? Maybe not because of interest rates, but so we're really headed down the home stretch. When we look at our caucus priorities in the House, prison, taking all the money, sweeping all the money, all the ongoing, all of the one-time monies into a prison incarceration fund was high middle priority. So we've got a lot of work left to do. We know we need the prison. My goodness, we're operating out of a prison that was built when the state was made a state, and so we know we need to do it. I have a lot of questions on how much that's going to cost. We have $706 million budgeted for that, and is it realistic to sweep this year and next year and probably the next year after that, sweep all the money to put into a prison incarceration fund? Could it be less? Could it be more? We do have a study that was done by the state of South Dakota that's been kind of put on the shelf, but originally for a 1,300 bed men's prison, it was about $338 million. We've increased it to 1,500 beds, and now we're at 706 million. So I think we have a right to ask those questions and try and figure out the best way to pay for it.
All right, thank you. And we're coming to the end of our time here, so I have the last question. For House Bill 1231. House Bill 1231 puts restrictions on foreign ownership of ag land. Why is this necessary, and what countries are on the list?
On the list, prohibited entity. Maybe you can bring that up. Yep, there it is. People's Republic of China, Republic of Cuba, Islamic Republic of Iran, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the Russian Federation, or the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. So those are the prohibited ones that did pass out of the House pretty firmly, right? Yes, 61-6. So I'll let somebody that's more versed in this area, but anyway, those are the countries that we're going to prohibit. There's a lot of issues in regards to purchase and lease. Big issues there in regards to there's currently some leases out there with foreign ownership. I know they tried to balance that, but maybe someone else can talk on that.
Representative Becky Drury, only because I sit by the Representative Wangsness that brought this bill. This bill came about last year too, but he really got together with a lot of the stakeholders, like the ag entities, the governor's office, and he tried to really get this bill so it was a good bill. And you know, the whole thought behind it is we don't want entities such as these buying large tracts of land right outside of Ellsworth Air Force Base. You know, it's for national protection. And it could be in Sioux Falls too, because, you know, we have an Air National Guard down there, I believe it is. And so it could be there too. So it's for national security protection. We don't know how it's really gonna work. We all know that there was an issue in North Dakota a couple years ago. So I think that's what prompted this, but the representative did a good job bringing stakeholders together, bringing the governor's office in to come up with something that was really palatable on all ends. It doesn't stop like Smithfield in Sioux Falls from owning their plant. And they have leases with hog producers to provide them stock. So it doesn't prohibit those leasers from having that land. So maybe you are a hog producer and Smithfield leases with you. It doesn't impede that, because we don't want to ding our food supply at the same time. But it is nice, and I think he's done a lot of work on it. I commend him for everything he's put into it, because he's been working on it for 2 years, and he finally got the right people at the table to make it a good bill.
Good morning still. So this bill has not come before the Senate, but I'm going to throw this question back out to the constituents that are in this audience. I'm not going to answer this question. I want you to think about this, ponder this. Two things. I'm not in favor or opposed to this bill. I haven't read it. But where does the state of South Dakota and the state legislature belong in the discussion on national security? what's the answer to that? Where do we go with that? And second, what this bill does is it eliminates potential buyers of private property. So where do we go with that? Do we as a state or as a 900,000 South Dakota citizens want to tell somebody that they can't sell their private property to a willing buyer? Those are questions that you should answer and that you should let us know how you feel about it. I haven't resolved this. I haven't thought about it a lot, but I do know that the state of South Dakota is pretty limited when it comes to securing our national borders and to identifying national security issues. We do now have an expert in the legislature in District 35 in the Senate that could probably answer some of those questions. But I think you people, as our constituents and as voters, need to think about that as well.
I think expert is a very strong word, but thank you. I can speak to the national security aspect of this. Make no mistake, and I don't have specifics, so I can't get into that. Ellsworth Air Force Base has become a target of foreign entities. There's no two ways about it. Again, this hasn't come before the Senate, and I've only been there 2 days. I have not read it. I will tell you my overall impression is that national security should be part of our responsibility. We're not on the border, but we're going to be involved very heavily in national security. Just to take the base in Ellsworth, for example, with this new type of technology, the greatest tool ever invented, you can bet that there's going to be attempts to get information on that. And that involves espionage, and that involves people doing whatever they can to do it. Now, one of my jobs in the Marine Corps was reconnaissance. It was intelligence gathering. And I can tell you that that was one of our goals, was to sneak in and look at things and sneak out and tell them what we saw. Well, there's no doubt if you own a piece of property next to it, there's no sneaking involved. You can sit there and do what you need to do to gather that information. I guess on its surface, the only other option would be the federal government owning all the land surrounding a base so that they could ensure no one was in there spying. And I don't know that that would be a great answer to that. So the other option, again, without seeing the bill, is restricting who can purchase that. It's not going to stop the intelligence collection activities. The attempts are going to continue. They're continuing today, but I think this maybe at least helps the situation just a tiny bit.
Representative Derby has a quick follow-up. We have a quick minute here on the Affordable Housing Fund.
All right, well, welcome, Senator Walsh. We're glad to have you on the team. Follow up on the question of the $200 million infrastructure grant and loan fund. They just got the grant agreement finalized this week. And I know all the developers have been waiting for this grant agreement, and the banks haven't been able to loan any interim financing until they had all of the documents for the grant agreement in order. So everybody's been waiting. This has been over 2 years. I guess we're a step closer, but it's taken way longer than anybody anticipated. And now we're heading into construction season. So I hope we get the money out the door soon.
All right, and with that, Representative Duffy.
I want to leave everybody with one thought. If you don't see your representative up here, and there's a reason, we're doing what we can here, and you can see we're outmatched. If you have some concerns or you have some belief in some of the things we've talked about today, whether it's airports or forests, or let your representation know, like you've let us know. We balance the budget every year. We're all up here saying we're fighting for money. Well, we are all fighting for money. But there's no day that doesn't happen where we're not going to balance our budget at the end. It's not like the federal system where you can print additional money. It is what it is. So we fight as hard as we can, but we're outmanned already. We need more help.
Thank you. And on that note, thank you, legislators, for showing up today and sharing with constituents, for being in the arena, doing the work. Thank you very much. And thank you, audience, for showing up and sharing your questions with the legislators. It's an awesome part of the legislative process. Next Cracker Barrel, same time, same place, but on March 2nd, that will be the third and final Elevate Cracker Barrel. We're coming into the home stretch. Thanks, everybody.